Interior, James's bedroom, midnight. It is a balmy night. Welding sounds float through an open window. James, 28, is in bed, fast asleep. An off-key rendition of O Sol Mio joins in. James becomes slowly awake. What the hell? The following evening, the hammering of metal is only slightly muffled by the closed window in James's bedroom. He growls, pulling the pillow over his head. The following afternoon, James knocks on the front door. After a minute, he rings the bell. Peter, 41, opens the door a crack. He moves boxes from the entrance hall by the staircase. Hello. I'm your neighbour, James. He holds out his hand. Peter opens the door fully and shakes his hand limply, smiling warmly. Nice to meet you, James. I'm Peter Donatelli. He pauses with an eager expression. The sculptor? James shifts from foot to foot, hands in his pockets. He looks skywards and then back to Peter. Look, Peter, there's an awful racket coming from your garage at night. You're interrupting my sleep. Peter's disappointed. I'm working. I'm so sorry. Sometimes I just zone out. Peter's shoulders slump forward, dejected. Understandable, mate, but I would rather you did it during a reasonable time, like during the day. Peter runs his hand over his bearded chin. I sculpt when I'm inspired, but I will try. Peter starts to close the door. James waves. Thanks, mate! Midnight that evening, the sound of an angle grinder on metal screeches through the open window. James sits bolt upright, breathing heavily. Angrily, he goes to the window, slamming it shut. He picks up his mobile and dials a number. 999, what's your emergency? Hi, yeah, I'd like to make a noise complaint. Can you send someone? Morning the day after. James reverses down his driveway, and a knock on his car window is heard. Peter stands, furious, pointing down. James presses the button and the window lowers. You called the police? It's been 2 months, Peter. I've asked you to keep the noise down. You haven't. Nothing has worked. He starts to raise the window, but Peter puts his hand on it. It won't be much longer. I fell asleep at work and got a warning. I've never gotten one of those in my life. I'm stressed enough as it is with this promotion, and your night work ain't helping me. Well, you can't blame me for that. My doctor says it's from sleep deprivation caused by you, so actually I can blame you. The window slides up. Enough's enough, Peter. Peter pulls his hand away quickly, and he shouts something James can't hear. It looks like, fuck you, James. It is late afternoon and James sits on the couch. The television is off, and he is holding a letter with Graham Lambert Auditing Firm written across the top. It's a final warning letter from the partners. A disciplinary hearing has been scheduled. James crumples the letter, tossing it to the other side of the room before running his hand down his face. He picks up an estate agent's card from the coffee table, looking at it morosely. That night, in James's bedroom, Peter's off-key singing comes through the closed window once again. Hammering on metal soon accompanies it. James growls. He kicks the sheet off and stomps to the window. Peter's garden is strewn with metal sculptures. A beautiful ballet dancer poses in the centre, surrounded by abstract ones. All are in various stages of rust. The garden appears unruly next to James's well-manicured lawn and trimmed fruit trees. James flings the window open. Damn it, Peter! It's after midnight, for God's sake! James bangs the window shut, sighing. He struggles into his slippers and gown and exits the room determinedly. He marches into Peter's renovated garage, knocks loudly on the side door. Peter opens it a crack. He looks through, tired. His hair is dishevelled, safety goggles around his neck. He pulls his protective earmuffs off. Peter holds up a hand. I know, the noise. I'm sorry, James. I need to finish. James steps into the workshop. It is littered with metal sheets, beams, metalwork equipment and sketches. Peter hurriedly throws a tarp over a person-shaped copper figure. He's nervous. The tarp settles. Can't do it in the daytime. Some of us have real jobs and need sleep. Being an artist is a real job. Peter slams his earmuffs onto the workbench. You know what I mean. Do your work in the day like everybody else. Peter slams his fist hard onto the table. James steps back, surprised by Peter's uncharacteristic vehemence. We have been over this, James. I have to work when inspiration strikes, night or day. Peter sighs, looking down at his fist on the table. James shakes off his shock, eyes narrowing. 8 months ain't quick. Even on weekends, it's never ending. James begins pacing, voice getting louder. Your banging and clanging keeps me up all night. My bosses are on my arse about my performance now. I can't work, can't stay awake, can't move and can't... James looks frustrated, clenching and unclenching his fists. Think! I can't think! James stops pacing, glaring at Peter. Peter crosses his arms over his chest, glaring back. You work on your art. I suffer for it. Peter rolls his eyes. Oh, you're oblivious to anyone else's problems but your own. Peter throws up his hands, stares at the ceiling, then returns his gaze to James. This is my last chance, James. If this doesn't work, I'll be... Peter gives James a pleading look. It won't be much... Ha! That's what you always say. It won't be much longer. Just a few more weeks. A tick starts between James's left eye. I'm done being a good neighbour. Find somewhere else to work or else. James turns to leave. Ha! A good neighbour? A good neighbour would cut me some slack. James moves around the table to stand toe-to-toe with Peter, hands balled into fists at his side. I've given you enough. 8 months. 8 damn months. James steps back, running his hand down his face, calming himself. Come on, Peter. Give it a rest, just for tonight. Peter sighs and picks up the protective earmuffs and walks to the sculpture. I can't. The exhibition is in 2 days. My main piece... Peter gestures towards it. Needs to be perfect. We all have problems. You're only choosing to see yours. He leaves, slamming the door behind him. He walks to his house, kicking a weather-beaten sign, for sale, sitting on his front lawn. James paces in his bedroom, eyes wild. I can't take it anymore. He pulls a laptop from his backpack by his bedside table. Sitting on his bed, he types, "Purchase arsenic online," into the search engine. He adds, "expedited delivery." The tick starts again. He absent-mindedly rubs it, smiling manically. It is an hour before sunset when James leaves his house carrying a bowl. Neighbourhood Watch leaders, a married couple, Lexi, 35, and Greg, 37, wave at him from his gate. He walks down the driveway. James, how you doing? James shakes hands with Greg. Hello, Greg. Lexi, all right? Lexi tries to hug James, but he steps out of her reach, putting the bowl against his side behind them. Lexi awkwardly pats him on the shoulder. Nice to see you. We missed you at the block party. All work and no play makes James a dull boy. Oh, yeah, sorry, I had to catch up on work deadlines, you know. Oh, on the weekend your boss must be a slave driver. You have no idea. Lexi gives him a once-over. You look ever so tired, James. Peter? Yes, him. Work. But won't be for much longer. Right. Greg's been working tirelessly to find buyers, but, you know, the economy. Suppose you won't have to if Peter finishes soon, as he says, always soon. Lexi winks, laughing. She looks down at Peter's house. An art gallery in a flashback. Night. If this exhibition's anything like his old stuff, people will love it. He used to be quite the toast of the art world. Peter stands beside a steel statue of some people dancing, similar to the ballet dancer in his garden. He smiles broadly, young and fresh-faced. Camera lights flash. A clamour of voices call his name. You wouldn't know looking at him, but he's had exhibitions all over the place. Peter's smile fades from the camera, and the lights continue to flash. Back on James's front yard now, and James's eyes are already glazed over. Undeterred, Lexi continues, leaning over, lowering her voice. But he blew it. Suppose those monstrosities in his garden are rejects from his fall from grace. James blinks, then looks towards Peter's house. Lexi waits expectantly for a reaction. James shakes his head as if to clear it, then looks at her blankly. Oh, did you hear about Natalie and Frank? She's sleeping with the gardener. I heard... Greg wraps an arm around Lexi, giving her a quick squeeze, looking down at her affectionately. Now, honey, I don't think James is interested in neighbourhood gossip. Greg straightens up, letting go of Lexi. Let's get the kids from Fraser's. Do some dinner before my shit with Calvin starts. Greg glances down the street, but his eye is caught by the bowl in James's hand. Oh, is that choc chip? Greg fishes out a biscuit. James opens his mouth to protest. Greg lifts it to take a bite. James knocks it from his hand. Greg gives James a sulky look, rubbing his hand. Lexi gapes at James. What did you do that for? It's not for you. It's not. You could have just said so, James. Jesus. You don't need them anyway, hunbun. Lexi points at Greg's dad bod. You didn't give me a chance. You just dove in there with not a care in the world. It could be poison for all you know. Greg and Lexi look at James with puzzled expressions, then at each other. Sorry, I've got to go. They wave half-heartedly. James rings the doorbell on Peter's front yard. Nothing happens. He rings it again. Shuffling footsteps come from inside. A bleary-eyed Peter opens the door. His expression becomes guarded, and James smiles brightly. What do you want? James holds the smile. Just to apologise, mate. James offers the bowl to Peter, and Peter peers in. Thank you, but I actually don't eat gluten. Oh, but they're gluten-free. Well, I have nut and lactose allergies too, I'm sorry. Peter closes the door. But! In James's kitchen, he throws the biscuits into the kitchen bin. He sits at the counter, staring sightlessly out of the window towards the street. The car engine starts up, and Peter drives past in his Jeep Cherokee. On Peter's driveway, James glances around, then awkwardly shimmies under Peter's car. Wire cutters in hand and a torch in his mouth, he clumsily holds a smartphone. A video tutorial on Jeep brake maintenance begins to play. He finds the brake line, trembling. He puts the wire cutters around it. Someone nudges into his leg. James sees 2 sets of shoes. He switches off the torch and slides out from beneath the car. Greg and Calvin, 46, stand over him. What you doing there, James? Calvin offers a hand to James. James fumbles with the torch and wire cutters. They clatter to the driveway. Calvin picks them up and turns them in his hand. "Oh, just being a good neighbour. I noticed Peter's brakes." He gestures as he searches for the word while getting to his feet. "I figured I'd just have a look at them for him." "Oh, cool, you know about cars?" James avoids eye contact. I dabble." "Oh, could you look at mine?" James raises his eyebrow, dazed. "Oh, I'm sorry, I hate it when people ask me for architectural advice just because we're neighbours. Do you mind, though?" Calvin looks embarrassed. "Sure, why not? It's all right." James grins and grabs his tools from Calvin. "Anyway, gotta get on with things." His eyes narrow, calculating as he walks away. People to kill. Calvin and Greg share a glance, not hearing his whispered admission. "He's an oddball." "Oh, you can say that again." It is night time now, and he spies on the cable bolting a large, sharp and ugly sculpture in place. He's nestled into the hedge. Unable to reach it, he tries to climb over the wall, clumsily holding some garden shears. The ladder slips and his feet scramble. After a few moments, a flashlight beam hits him. "Or you! Neighbourhood Watch!" James freezes against the wall, feet in an uncomfortable position. The shears land in Peter's garden. Shit. Standing primed, Greg has a mobile phone and Calvin points a large metal torch at James. "James? Is that you?" "Who else is my garden?" They visibly relax. James's feet slip. Greg and Calvin grab him awkwardly and help him down. "We thought you were a burglar. What are you doing?" "Pruning my peach trees. Saw Peter's hedges looked a bit shabby and thought I'd give him a trim for him." James gestures towards the hedge. Calvin lifts an eyebrow. Greg looks with confusion between the hedge and James. "At night?" James smiles brightly, brushing his hands against his clothing. "Never put off till tomorrow what you can be done today, right?" Greg and Calvin sharing doubtful look. "You've been awfully helpful today. Why the change of heart? I mean, we all know you and him hate each other." James looks surprised, clears his throat and brushes past Greg as he sidesteps Calvin. "Gotta go, let yourselves out, eh? We need to keep an eye on him. There's something not right, you know." Greg taps his head. The following night, James stands at the kitchen window, peering through the curtains, dressed entirely in black. He scowls, his entire cheek and left eyelid twitch. He rubs it roughly. Calvin and Greg walk past his driveway. James checks his watch. 1:05. Stealthily, he leaves, heading next door. The door is unlocked. He lets himself in, looking around expectantly. It's quiet. "Peter?" Coming around a workbench, James spies Peter unconscious beneath the sculpture. A pool of blood spreads beneath Peter. James has a moment of sanity and looks around. "Oh, God, phone. Phone." He pats his clothes. "Shit, no phone. James grabs a steel pole from the corner and sticks it beneath the statue. Strained, the pole begins to bend, and he tries to lever the statue up. Peter groans, remaining unconscious. "The accountant. James." Peter gestures weakly. Thinking it's at him, James begins to lower the statue. It fell. Help me." James's arms shake under the weight of the statue. "The accountant fell. I think I'm bleeding." Peter feebly pushes on the statue. It slips. Peter cries out. Drawing all his strength, James levers it off. Calvin and Greg burst through the side door, the statue turning over, clanging. "Put it down, James. Don't do it, James. Take it easy." James is transfixed, his eyes on the statue. He falls to his knees. Greg and Calvin come from around the workbench, standing behind James. What the... Oh, Jesus. The statue that now lays on the floor is a figure shouting silently, his hands raised in frustration, face full of anger and madness. They all recognise the angry features. It is the spitting image of James. The end.
This week's episode, Killing Peter, was written by Lauren Brits. It was read by Marcus Armstrong, with music by Nikolai Heidlas and Kevin MacLeod. As always, you can find the links to their work in the description. Don't forget, you can also find us on YouTube and Spotify, and be sure to subscribe and follow if you like what you hear. We'll be back soon.